The following program is an MLWRadio.com production.
Welcome back to the second episode of A Week of Lariat. Hiroyoshi Yamamoto / Hiroyoshi Tenzan. I'm your host, Strigger, joined by Dylan. Dylan, now we're back here in Japan. Hiroyoshi Yamamoto has returned from Europe in 1995, and we are looking at a match of a tag team that you named, or that is commonly known as Cho-Ten, Masahiro Chono as the veteran, and Hiroyoshi Tenzan as his young disciple.
I like to say that I'm the one who named them originally. It was really, Chono called me up. I was only 3 years old, but he still valued my opinion at the time. So that shows you where I was born.
Of genius.
Yes, exactly. It was all me. Also known as Team Wolf as well, so some people would call them as NWO Japan later on. And Chono and Tenzan, they're a very well-known team.
Yeah.
And now the best part is that we will not have to call him by his real name anymore.
Yeah, we don't get confused all the time.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Like I said, now you never have to struggle again with that. He is Tenzan from here on out. But yes, again, as I said, when I pick these matches, I always try to pick different big runs and major moments of their career. We had the Young Lion run of Tenzan, first Tokyo Dome match, and now we have here a big match for Chono and Tenzan, which is a legendary tag team in Japan. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking about this match here.
Yes, you mentioned it. They were a team in various incarnations, various stables, and this one here was Okami Gundan, which was kind of a predecessor to the NWA Japan stable that the two were a part of later too, and that then again kind of morphed into Team 2000, and a lot of Team 2000 members were also later on members of Black New Japan, so it basically is the same stable like 4 times.
Yes, all under different names. And Chono with the same music on all of them as well, which we heard here. One of the best theme songs in New Japan history for sure.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, as we get into this match, what led up to all of this, this tag title shot we're about to talk about, was originally when Tenzan came back, he was going to be like more of a babyface. Shiro Koshinaka invited him into his faction, Heisei Ishigun, but Tenzan said he came out to the ring. It was like, okay, but then he turned on him right away to go with Chono. He got sued, and if you've never seen this angle, this turn was super heated. But the crowd hated Tenzan for this. So immediately coming back as a heel, I thought it was such a great stroke of genius, especially considering the level of worker he was at this time. I thought it was so smart to put him in there with someone like Chono, who was a super charismatic leader, and I thought they were a great pairing. But the turn itself was so well done that the fans were super hot against Tenzan. Similar to, I know in All Japan, everyone loves the 4 pillars, but one of the major points of the angle was Taue turning on the Super Generation Army to join Jumbo Moon. And the crowd often hated Taue more than someone like Jumbo even, because he had a legacy, he had respect. But much like then, Tenzan didn't have any kind of legacy that Chono had as a former champion, G1s and all that. Tenzan didn't have any of that. So for him to be a traitor right away made him a super over and compelling heel at this time. And that led to this whole storyline and match with the champions at this point.
Yes, and the tag team of Tenzan and Chono, we have 165 matches of the two as a tag team in our database. As I said, from Okami Gundan over NWA Japan to Team 2000 Black New Japan. They were 5 times IWGP Tag Team Champions with their 4th run lasting 446 days with 7 successful title defenses. And this one here is for the vacant IWGP Tag Team Title, a match from the Osaka Prefectural Gymnasium on June 12, 1995. The match is rated 4.25 stars by Dave Meltzer. We don't have a current total rating at Cage Match, actually, because nobody rated the match, but that's why we're here to talk about it. We go to the entrances. Tenzan. He is fired up for this match. He is rocking. And Chono is coming out behind him. He's more of a veteran. He's cool. He doesn't really care a lot. But Tenzan, he's fired up.
I love your description of that. Tenzan coming out. Again, you were totally right, though. Tenzan coming out super excited. This is his first title shot.
Yeah.
And Chono, it's like, man, I've already been world champion. But also, it's important to note here, as we talked about Chono, and I love that we moved from Tenzan to this is a very interesting point of Chono's career, as he was still fresh as a heel, not even a year into his heel run yet, but he is somebody that was really taking off as a character in the last couple of years. We talked about him as a worker, but him as a character has really grown leaps and bounds by this point in 95 from where he was at 92, 93, 94. So now he's really the Chono that he's beginning to become the Chono we know and appreciate.
Yes, they really made sure to portray him as this buffalo character that, of course, was made better by the stature that he came with, and he had this huge helmet already at this point in time. So definitely,
I'm talking about Chono. You're talking about Tenzan. I'm saying Chono is the one who's graduated from his character from babyface Chono we talked about in the last show. Well, you were right about Tenzan as well with the buffalo character. Like I said, he's back from excursion now. And with that, and we would really know Tenzan as well. But Chono, as I said, he's grown leaps and bounds from the character that we had known before from the G1 as a babyface. He's now in the midst of his heel run, and as a great leader, him coming out not as excited fit his character or what he was at. And Tenzan as well, like it fit his character as well. And like you said, they had the great helmet. He really had these two really actually don't go together that well aesthetically. It's like Chono with all black, and then Tenzan with like the rainbow colors and the helmet and all that. They're not really that similar look-wise, but they made good partners in the end.
Yes, absolutely. And on the other side, we have an odd couple too, with Shinya Hashimoto being vastly popular. We get a huge Hashimoto call from the audience, and of course his tag team partner Junji Hirata. He was Hirata, just coming out there, standing there, besides Hashimoto.
I mean, that totally describes his role in this whole team.
Yes.
It's like
he's there too.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Hashimoto's super over, then Hirata. Do you like him better as himself or as Super Strong Machine?
I think as Super Strong Machine.
I mean, he really had no presence at all here in this match.
At least with the Super Strong Machine thing, he had something going.
You could tell whoever put him under the mask saw this, likely in his career. And maybe, Inoki or somebody was like, maybe it's time for a change, or maybe he was like, man, I want to be myself. I want to do something a little different. But I definitely agree with you. It's just a total step down from Super Strong Machine. And he was never going to be a great worker. Let's not go crazy about it. But he had so much more presence as this masked character. He's just like super generic friend of
exactly just a trooper.
Yeah, exactly, perfect. Like he's like a grunt soldier to the General Hashimoto.
Yeah, and General Hashimoto is provoked by the young Hiroyoshi Tenzan, who gets to the mic, and as the match starts, Tenzan and Hashimoto go at it. They just throw bombs at one another, like in the first couple of seconds of the match. And there are huge knee strikes from Hashimoto on poor Tenzan. And then, very early on, Hirata gets tagged in. It's not so exciting anymore here, but Hirata takes early control over Tenzan with a lariat. Tenzan is thrown out, is back in. Chono throws Hirata out. Chono got tagged in, of course, earlier here. And he doesn't even want to bother with Hirata because he wants Hashimoto. So his role was very clear.
This might have been my favorite Hirata part of this whole match, though, because normally when something like this would happen, the big star would be like, Chono was like, no, I want him, like, not you. And usually if that would happen, the guy would just tag out, and then the big guy would come in. Mm-hmm. But here, Hirata was like, no, like, screw you, you're fighting me. And Chono just threw him out of the ring afterwards. But I like that. I like that Hirata actually stood up for himself for once, because that's very realistic to me. If we were in a tag match string, and I was in the ring, and the guy said, no, I want him, I'd be like, fuck. Like, I'm fighting you. Like, that would make me more inspired. But I also would hope, maybe I would if we were a heel team. But he was a babyface, and this just made him look like a geek where he got thrown out of the ring, ultimately.
Hey, he got a suplex in on Masahiro Chono before Tenzan got tagged in, and Tenzan also has to eat a DDT by Hirata. So yeah, he stood up for himself. That's good for him.
And that was his highlight of this match, in my opinion.
Hashimoto now enters the ring. There are Mongolian chops by Tenzan, and then the Eastern Lariat Patreon favorite move of all time, the eye rake returns.
Yes, I love this. I noted this myself. I was like, all capital letters, eye rake on my notes right now. So I love this. I'm so glad you pointed that out.
There's some double team moves with Chono. Hashimoto is able to counter that and tags in Hirata. Chono, too, goes for the eyes and again throws Hirata out. Tenzan on the outside stomps on him. They go to double team Hirata more, and the crowd now heavily boos the Okami Gundam team. And it looks like, for a brief second, I thought Hirata would be being isolated, and that would lead to like the big comeback for him and Hashimoto later. But Tenzan still talks shit to Hashimoto, and Hirata gets Tenzan to his own corner to get help from Hashimoto, who goes for a half Boston Crab. Of course, like kind of talking shit back in a Hashimoto way, like not really talking, but applying a young lion move on young Hiroyoshi Tenzan.
He talked with actions.
Yeah.
Big Hashimoto. Just like when he drew that vulgar picture in Canada. He talked with actions. Okay? But Hashimoto, I'm a huge fan of him here, obviously. And you kind of teased it here when you talked about the opening portion and whenever Tenzan would do stuff. I thought Tenzan was such a great heel in this match, and it totally made it satisfying whenever Hashimoto would come back in to get some revenge on this young punk Tenzan here. So I really love that. And like you said, nobody would consider Hashimoto like the number one trash talker, but he could beat people's asses. So who cares? Pretty much that's his strength. You go to your strengths. If you could talk good, go for it. But if you can hit really hard, that's what you do, and I thought he did a great job here. And I love what you mentioned with the crab hold, which again is, like you mentioned, a young lion type of move. This is a very common trope even later on in life, whether in All Japan, Noah, New Japan, wherever. Hitting the crab hold is a tradition almost to try and make this young guy pass out. So you don't use your big moves like Black Cat did in his match versus Tenzan. Hashimoto's like, I'm not Black Cat. I'm not using my big moves on you. I'm using the crab.
Yeah, there's then a big flurry between all four men inside the ring. And this brings us to the second half of the match, as the match actually got better and better and also more dramatic towards the finish. As here, first of all, Chono gets Hirata into a leg lock, and Tenzan also continues to go for Hirata's right leg after that, which later became important in the match. Chono gets tagged back in. There's more double teams, and the camera misses some double team moves of Chono and Tenzan. Chono then goes for his diving shoulder, but Hirata meets him on the top rope and hits a very nice looking superplex. Follows up with a power bomb, And we see then for Okami Gundan, Masa Saito is getting up on the apron to loud boos from the crowd, distracting Hirata, of course. Hirata then sells the leg that has been worked over before by both Tenzan and Chono, but is able to do a diving headbutt, which was a big mistake, because that hurt his leg even more, and he has to roll out of the ring. What did you think about this portion of the match?
I know we kind of talked bad on him earlier, but I thought Hirata really pulled his weight in his role. He wasn't going to be someone like Hashimoto that was going to be exciting, but I thought, like you mentioned with the dueling leg stuff, I really thought Hirata did a fine job as this second-in-command type of person. Like I say, he's not going to blow you away or think he's this great wrestler or anything, but I thought he did a more than serviceable job. I think Tenzan was looking really good in this match, actually, and Chono, his strength to me was, you kind of mentioned it with Saito getting on the apron, but whenever Chono would do something underhanded, like a heel tactic, that was his best portion of the match to me, was whenever he could do something sneaky and foul somebody. And I like that they at least took the time to distract the referee. It wasn't as contrived as you would see sometimes, like nowadays with Red Shoes. They at least tried a little bit. I'm never going to be a huge fan of that, but I thought it worked how they did it. And considering Chono's limitations as a worker, I think you had to go this direction with him in a lot of ways, and I thought Tenzan, Tenzan was really impressing me in this match, actually, in his heel role against Hirata and Hashimoto. So I thought the Hirata and Tenzan segments, on paper, you're pretty iffy on it, but I thought it totally worked, especially with how you mentioned the scrum in the middle of it. I thought the crowd was really into all of this. Hirata, Hashimoto, and all of Team Wolf here, I thought they did a great job.
Yeah, crowd was hot, and they got even hotter for the final minutes of the match. And next on, we were able to see two of the most well-known strikes in New Japan Pro Wrestling history, with Tenzan hitting his Mongolian chops on Hashimoto, and Hashimoto on his side countering with his huge overhead chops. He also then goes for some of his big kicks and hits his DDT for a 2 count. Chono gets into the ring, and he gets his portion of Hashimoto's kicks as well. And here we see Hirata on the outside. He is hurt. So basically from here on, Hashimoto has to fight most of the match on his own. Is able, though, to hit a brainbuster on Hiroyoshi Tenzan. It's almost enough. I think he got a 2 count out of that. Hashimoto then survives more attacks from both Chono and Tenzan. And Chono gets a little out to lunch, I'd say, because he tries an Ensuigiri on Shinya Hashimoto and spectacularly fails because Hashimoto just ducks it, and then Hashimoto hits one himself. I thought that was funny.
That was so cool. Like, that made Hashimoto look so cool, and It was very funny. Like I said, but this is something, and this is a guy who, we talked about it in Hashimoto's, his version of the Week of Lariat, but Samoa Joe took so much from Hashimoto, and that's like a total spot I would see for him later on. You've seen it before where a guy would jump off the rope and then Joe would just walk away all casual. This was basically like that. It's like he totally blew off this crappy insecurity that Chono threw, and then hit a way better one on his own. And I don't know about you, because when I was watching this, I didn't really have I was into the match and stuff. I wasn't thinking about the finish or anything like that. But to me, I felt like this was going to end with Hashimoto as dealing with double teams and stuff like that, fighting on his own. I just felt like they were going to tag in Hirata, and he was going to run wild and stuff. That would be a more traditional face and peril for the hot tag. But let's continue with how that went. But I really like that segment with Hashimoto and Chono.
Yeah, absolutely. So from there on, from the Ensuigiri, Hirata is back on the apron, but falls down again. So no hot tag to him. Tenzan uses one of the moves that he would use later in his career, very famously too, the mountain bomb for a 2 count. Hits a diving headbutt from the top on Hashimoto, but here Hirata is able to get into the ring to break up the cover, and that was very nicely shot because you didn't really see Hirata coming. Yeah,
the camera work in New Japan, I think that continues even to this day.
Yes.
Where Sometimes they'll miss stuff, but then sometimes they'll shoot it in a great way that totally enhances the match. So it's kind of a 50-50 deal, and I think here you mentioned it earlier. I thought you were totally correct with your assertion earlier. I love that this time around they got it right, and they shot this really well.
Yeah. Hirata is inside the ring again to break up a cover because Tenzan here goes for one of his all-time favorite moves and one of the moves that he was very well known for, the moonsault press. So Hirata breaks up the cover there. Chono goes to an STF on Hashimoto, and we see that Hashimoto is bleeding from the mouth in this portion of the match. They do somewhat of a double team power bomb on Hashimoto, and Hirata again back on the apron. And at this point of the match, I thought, Cho-Ten, they just can't get it done.
Mm-hmm. And I loved that these two have totally gone after Hashimoto here. It was really interesting that Hashimoto would be, again, this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, because if you look at this match on paper, you would think Hirata's the one taking the beating and Hashimoto's the one that's going to get the hot tag. But the way they built it was more the opposite, where Hashimoto was on the receiving end of punishment, and he was the one making the saves and scrambling after his injury. And I think it totally worked for the crowd, and I thought it was a unique build to the match as well. So I really like that they handled this a little bit differently than I expected it on paper.
Yeah, absolutely. We go to the finishing sequence. Hashimoto tries to fight back against Chono, but Tenzan again is there to help, so they really backed up Hashimoto into a corner with Hirata being totally out. Hashimoto still fights back and gets in his famous leg sweep. Hirata is there, but it really is too late as Masahiro Chono hits one big Kenka kick on Shinya Hashimoto for the win and for the first tag team title victory of the two.
Again, on paper. So now we've gone through this match. We've gone through these layers and these levels of this match. And not only did Hashimoto play the face of peril more than Hirata, but he never even made the hot tag. They just pinned him. So like they've totally subverted traditional tag team psychology here. But I feel like to excellent effect. I think the crowd was so into this when Hashimoto was in the ring. No disrespect to Hirata, but again, I think Hashimoto was so much more. He had so much more of a connection with these fans, and it made the heels look so much more hateable to the fans as well. That they were double teaming Hashimoto, they were ganging up on him, they were taking him out, and Hashimoto, it made him look even human as a monster that he couldn't overcome 2-on-1, which I think is more realistic even for a tough badass like him, that you can't fight off 2-on-1 and really 3-on-1 sometimes with Saito interfering as well and distracting the referee so they could do more dirty tactics. So I really liked the psychology of it as much as even the work in the match itself. How this was laid out I thought was really smart.
Yeah, you were swerved multiple times in this match, but swerved in a good way. As I pointed out, that first it looked like that Hirata would be isolated from Hashimoto, but that didn't happen. Then it looked like Hirata would be back on the apron to be tagged in, fell down again. So multiple swerves here to put over the heel team. And as you said, Hashimoto looked human. And on the other side, Hiroyoshi Tenzan and Masahiro Chono looked very dominant as the heels, which was of course, mostly important for Tenzan to start off his run as a heel on the side of Masahiro Chono. So, like, for all of the guys in the match, that this match really played to their strengths, I gotta say. And I think it helped Tenzan a lot to gain respect from the New Japan fans.
Yeah, I thought he did a really great job here in this role. Again, for somebody as young as he is here, you got to remember he's not even 4 years into his career yet, or just over 4 years, and just off of the excursion. But he's playing this role really well. Tenzan, and I thought of the two, I actually thought he was probably the more dynamic between him and Chono at this point, even though he's not really known for that. You mentioned the moonsault. Tenzan here noticeably less thick than he would be later on in his career as well here, I noted. But he had a lot of spry movement here. He had a lot of fire to him, like really charismatic stuff when he was going after Hashimoto, and I think if anything won respect, it was that he had showed no fear to the great ass kicker in Hashimoto here. But the heel tactics worked so well, you really believe that this crowd hated these guys by the end of it, and they totally supported the heroes and wanted to see them come back and get revenge on these asshole Team Wolf guys that won the tag team titles.
Yeah, but it didn't happen, and I thought this was a very good choice too. Very good match. The second half, as I said, got better and better by the minute to kind of climax to a dramatic finishing sequence. So, yeah, another good choice on your part.
I'm glad. I hope everybody checks this one out because I think a lot of people, especially now, you see Hirata, Chono after his injury, and Tenzan, you might not love him based on his older work. But if you look at this match for what it is and actually watch it, I think this was a really, really smartly worked match by all of them involved. And both these matches, young Tenzan's doing it for me. I like him here, and he's done a great job in two different roles, both as the upstart rookie and the heelish person with Chono. And it's worth noting that I really think of anybody else. I mean, Tenkoji, I think, is more famous overall, and they obviously had much longer tenure together. But between the two partners, I think Tenzan has so much in common with Chono, especially in terms of how they were booked. You mentioned all the short title reigns. Who else does that? Chono. Chono won all these G1s. Who else won a lot of G1s? Tenzan. It's like they had so much in common with how they were booked. And I think that was actually on purpose by the end, in the mid-2000s, we'll get to with Tenzan. But I love that they have that little connection with them, with Tenzan and Chono. And they were really a good team, and especially a really good heel team. Not necessarily like, the greatest work, like the Holy Demon Army or whatever, with all 5-star matches and all of that. But they played their role so well, and I especially think at this time period, look at the tag team titles in this era, leading up to them. You're seeing a lot of stuff like the Hellraisers, which were not work rate machines by any means. The Jurassic Powers, who I respect, I like all these guys in their own ways, but they weren't doing it for me at the time. It was time for a change, and I like that they went to this heel route, which was a something different for the time. So I really appreciate the change in booking philosophy, however that happened.
Yes, and this tag team title run that we talked about, or this tag team title win, wouldn't really last long. It was their first one. The very well remembered ones are really the 4th and the 5th tag run they had together, because as I mentioned, the 4th run was 446 days, and the final one that they had from 2005 to 2006 was 329 days. So as a tag team, they were really popular, and I think that Tenzan benefited a lot from Chono, as you pointed out. I was able to, very similar to the Black Cat scenario, where he kind of was guided by the cooler veteran, as we said here on the entrance, that Chono was so cool, knew the situation, could kind of lead Hiroyoshi Tenzan to win the tag team title. So, yeah. Here we are.
And they would be together through all the incarnations of that faction that they would have.
Exactly. So here we are in 1995, and really for the most part, Hiroyoshi Tenzan, of course, he was part of a lot of G1 climaxes. We'll talk about that later here on this series too. But for the most part of his career, he would be considered a tag team wrestler. And with Masahiro Chono, and then a little bit later on too with Kojima, would regain the tag team titles a couple of more times before he then became a singles wrestler. But before we go to Tenzan as a singles wrestler, there's another tag team match that we'll talk about in our next episode. それも大人の勲章だって時の重さをかみしめ生きている